All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first council meeting of 2022. Start here by calling the meeting to order. Everyone can hear me okay, right? Just make sure this is all right. Okay, good. So we acknowledge that the ground on which we live is the traditional territory of the Caldwell First Nation, of the Three Fires Confederacy, and the original people of Point Pelee and Pelee Island and its surrounding lands and waters, and that of the Huron-Wendat and Wyandot peoples. We recognize and respect the First Nations who are stewards of the land and waters of Turtle Island and who have embraced stewardship since the time immemorial. We would also like to acknowledge the contributions of other nearby First Nation communities and all original people across Turtle Island. I believe at this time we'll have a moment of silence followed by the national anthem. A little bit of technical difficulty there, but hopefully everyone was singing nice and loudly at home. Everyone was muted, I see, for that. Can I get any disclosures of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Yeah, there being none, can I get an adoption of the minutes from our meeting held December 14th and the minutes of the budget meeting held December 15th? Moved by Jeff, second by Anita, all in favor? Okay. I have no mayor's comments except Mayor Bondi was in another meeting unable to sign on for this one on time. So we'll move right on to our presentations this evening. Our first presentation is the CWATS Master Plan update, and we will have two people joining us this evening. We have Diane. Oh, Diane, I wish I could pronounce your last name correctly. From Active Transportation Coordinator for the County of Essex, as well as Jerry Behe, Manager of Transportation for the County of Essex as well. So welcome to our first meeting of 2022.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having us. I'm just about to share my screen with the presentation. I hope everyone can see. Wonderful. Thank you again for the introduction as well. We also have from Lasalle, Jonathan Osborne and Michael Capucci, who are the CWATS committee members. Myself, I'm the Active Transportation Coordinator from the County of Essex, and Jerry Bell is the Manager of Transportation Planning and Development at the county. CWATS is the county-wide active transportation system that connects all 7 municipalities within Essex County. It's the main method by which the county, the municipalities, together champion safe active transportation, create connections between communities, encourage healthy living, and contribute to economic development and tourism. CWATS was officially adopted in 2012 when the master plan was released. The plan is based on 3 pillars: policies, network, and programs. First, the plan incorporates language from county planning policies and provides specific design guidance for towns in implementing the 800-kilometer network. It also provides guidance for relevant town policies when they're updated. Second, we work with local municipalities to build and enhance facilities, and I'll speak later in the presentation on how we specifically do that. Since 2012, we've conducted annual active transportation traffic counts to measure our network usage And since then, we've seen the number of cyclists double and the number of women and children on our network increase than ever before. And so this shows us that we're building more facilities that attract different kinds of users and that active transportation is on the rise in the county. And lastly, we also create and manage programs alongside our community partners. For example, we partner with Bike Windsor Essex to offer bike education classes and for all ages and promote bike safety. Since we started our active transportation counts in 2015, we've also seen an increase in helmet usage, which shows us that our safety education programs are reaching our target audiences. So together, these pillars make CWATS a network that's well used and that's attracted more cycling tourism to the region. In 2012, the county, the municipalities, and the health unit signed a CWATS charter and took the Couch Potato Pledge. And this is an ongoing commitment to furthering safe and accessible active transportation within the county. Our network is made up of different facility types that can support a wide range of users. Depending on the road context, we have different kinds of separation. So this will range from signed routes to multi-use paths on roads. The Greenway multi-use trails are our most well-known facility type. They're owned by IRCA and they're maintained by them as well. But the greenways exist on our network and they provide those connections to key destination points. It's also important to note that sidewalks are not included on the CWATS network. As per the 2012 master plan, they're the responsibility of the towns to plan for and deliver for them where they're needed. So how do we build? There are three mechanisms in place to do so. First, we've got our CWATS core infrastructure program. CWATS is a municipality-led process. So the towns submit applications every year to build parts of the network based on their budget and priorities for that year. The facility types in the master plan will provide guidance to the towns on the type of design and engineering best practices. We have a cost sharing formula that's applied based on the road context that's in front of you here. And this formula was developed in 2012, and we're not proposing a change to the formula as part of our recent master plan update. After we receive applications, the county will review them and they're voted on by the CWATS committee. Usually the design work or the construction is expected to follow the next year. We do encourage applications that complete segments that create a continuous facility. Our budget for 2022 is approximately 1.5 million. We also have a municipal partnership program where we support towns in adding more supportive active transportation facilities that are not simply linear infrastructure. Past projects include wayfinding signs, benches, bike lockers, bike repair stations, and education programming. This is a 50-50 split between the county and the towns, and the county's budget on an annual basis for this is $100,000. And lastly, the county has a paved shoulder program where we align our 5-year road rehab program with paved shoulders that were identified in the master plan. When we tender the procurement, we'll do it for both the road and the paved shoulders, and this allows us cost and schedule efficiencies in expanding the CWATS network. And the 2022 budget for this is 2.8 million. Since 2012, we've built over 55% of the network due to these three programs. And as they say, it does take a village, and the success of CWATS over the past 10 years shows what collaboration between various municipalities and levels of government can achieve. We have a CWATS committee that's chaired by the county. It's comprised of the 7 municipalities as well as the health unit, MTO, IRCA, Chatham-Kent, and Windsor. We've also built partnerships with various organizations that support active transportation, cycling tourism, active school travel, and generally being outdoors. And these are a few of our key partners. At the moment, we're updating our master plan to incorporate new provincial guidelines that are design guidelines for active transportation and new best practices that have developed since 2012. We're adding a focus on equity, and we're also identifying new partnerships. We began this work in 2018, and we're progressing through the chapters as you can see in front of you. At the moment, we're here before you because we're looking to finalize our proposed network, which we've shared for your comments and feedback today. Our master plan update includes upgraded facility types that adhere to new provincial guidelines and engineering best practices, which sometimes require greater separation and have emerged since 2012. We've also added routes based on feedback from the public and the CWATS committee members. With CWATS receiving general public support over the past 10 years, there's now an increased desire from users to enhance facility types and expand the network. The proposed changes of new routes and revised facility types amount to over 46 kilometers in Lasalle. Due to updated design guidelines, which call for enhanced facility types, we made changes to previously proposed routes that were found in the 2012 master plan. There's no time in the presentation today to go through each one, but we are looking for the town's feedback on these proposed changes. We've also proposed new routes which are outlined here, and we're also looking for the town's feedback on these new routes. The updated master plan will also provide guidelines on how we can prioritize projects. The master plan itself is a 20-year plan, and this phasing will serve as a guide for Lasalle and the county when determining budgets and annual construction priorities. As part of this phasing, the projects were prioritized according to alignment with the county's road rehab program, any planned capital works, feasibility design studies that were completed or are underway, or any key tourism routes. I'll note that this phasing is very preliminary since the network itself has not reached the final draft stage and we're still awaiting input from all municipalities. But the county does welcome feedback from LaSalle on the proposed network and phasing as well. In 2012, we estimated the cost of the proposed network based on information available at the time. In the past 10 years, these costs have risen due to actual construction costs, additional design studies, and other factors. And this slide shows the scale of the 2012 network, most of which has been built to date. We've developed very preliminary cost estimates based on the proposed phasing and facility types I spoke to earlier. And these costs include a 20% contingency and 15% design costs. I'll note that unit costs are based on the actual county experience of construction over the past 10 years. And they don't include land acquisition or utility relocation. Detailed design will need to occur sometimes, and that might add additional costs as well. And I'll note that these costs are over a 20-year timeframe, and they're proposed as a guideline for budgeting. Ultimately, CWATS is a town-led process, and there's flexibility in its application based on annual priorities and the collaboration between the county and the town. And these numbers serve as a rough estimate at this point and will likely change as network changes are made as we receive comments from municipalities. So today we've provided an overview of CWATS as it operates in the proposed master plan network and phasing. We value and look forward to the town's comments on these changes within 30 days. We've provided additional slides in the appendix for your review. And once we receive your comments, we'll finalize the network, which will help us move into the phasing and implementation finalization. And we plan to return to LaSalle Council later this year with a full draft of the master plan for your approval. Thank you, members of council, for your time today. We are available to answer any of your questions.
Thank you very much, Diana. Was there anything, Jerry, that you wanted to add?
No, I don't have anything to add. Diana is the CWATS committee chair, and she's prepared this and taken the same presentation. So I've got nothing to add, but I'm here if there's any questions.
Thank you very much. Members of council? Any questions, comments, concerns? Councillor Reno?
Thank you. My question is actually for our own administration, and I'm just wondering how this all fits into our budgeting process, and have we already anticipated some of this work, like, for example, into the next year? I mean, we just went through our budgeting process, and I don't remember breaking anything down into saying, hey, this is a CWATS program or anything. I'm just wondering maybe if administration could just give me an idea how we fit in this big financial puzzle.
And excuse me, I can take that. Thank you, Councillor Reno. We do have the plan, the master plan that the county is updating, does mostly line up with our 2018 active transportation master plan. There's a few comments that we still have to give to the county on the master plan, but all in all, it seems to line up. Typically, we'll draw from our pedestrian safety allocation that council already provides as part of the budget, the 500,000 annual allocation. But if there's any other larger scale projects which may be coming up in the next few years, we would make those requests to council separately. One that comes to mind, one of the next ones that might come up that lines up with CWATS and our needs is Malden Road, for instance. So that's identified on the CWATS plan, and that's some pedestrian and active transportation infrastructure that we'll be doing as part of the Malden Road work. So we do have an allocation there with our pedestrian safety money And then if there's anything above that, we would come to council probably for a larger project.
Supplemental, Jonathan, knowing that all the work that that preceded that EA, knowing that we then took responsibility for everything north of Malden, and knowing that phase 1 is going to be everything north of Malden, it's fair to say that we will be on the hook for that complete cost, and there'll be no sharing with the county on that.
I just saw Peter pop up. I don't know if he wants to take that one or.
Thank you. Yes, through you, Councillor Reno, the portion of Malden Road, I believe you're talking about Malden Road that has transferred into a connecting link. There is cost sharing set out in the CWAT's master plan on how that cost sharing occurs through connecting links if it's a CWAT segment. So certainly as part of our comments, we'll be going back to the county and filling them in and letting them know what our anticipated scheduling is for Malden Road. Certainly, we're just in the final stages of the EA. So once we get past those final stages, then we can really start to work out the details with the county for our budgeting, future budgeting, and for their future budgeting.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions? None? All right, so if I can get a motion on item number 1.
I'll make a motion to receive.
Okay, so motion to receive from Councillor Reno, supported by Councillor Akapata. All in favor? Great, thank you. Thank you, Diana, and thank you, Jerry, for joining us this evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on, we don't have any public meetings in our hearings or delegations. So item E1 will be where we go now, which is the Benoit House Museum Strategic Plan. And we have Allison Story joining us. She is the Communications and Planning Specialist from ADS Consulting Group. And I'm not sure if Mrs. Finero wants to introduce anything before we start.
Great. Yes. Good evening, Deputy Mayor Malash and members of council. As you're aware, we engage the services of Allison Story of ADS Consulting to prepare a strategic plan for the Benoit House Museum. Although timelines for museum construction and opening have changed, we would like to move forward with the approval of the strategic plan. Having an approved plan will allow us to continue to develop heritage programming, work towards opening of the museum, and will ensure we're prepared should funding or grants become available. Ms. Story is here this evening to present the plan. Upon approval, the next steps outlined in the report can continue with a focus on digital collections and exhibits for the time being. At the completion of Ms. Story's presentation, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. So with that, I will pass it over to Ms. Story.
Thanks, Patty. Hi, everybody. Great to see you on Zoom tonight. Thanks again for having me. I will share my screen to go through the presentation. I'm not sure the next step that I need to take for that.
Miss Story, there should be a button, a green button at the bottom of your Zoom that says share screen, and you should be able to share from there.
Wonderful. Thank you for helping me. I appreciate that. Okay. Has that come up to everybody?
Nothing yet.
Oh, I have to hit share. You'd think after 22 months of this, I would remember how to do all these steps. Thank you for your patience. Can you see the town of Lasalle strategic plan? Okay. Thank you. First of all, many thanks to Patty for all of her help on this project, as well as Dawn and Kevin, and also Karen Karinsich and Jenny Day, who were very helpful as project associates throughout this work. So thank you to all of you for helping get this project underway. It's been a pleasure working with all of you, and I've really enjoyed the project team that we've had pulled together. And thanks to everyone on council who spoke with me earlier in the year about your thoughts on this project and sharing your feedback on that. It's been extremely valuable to have that input from you. So I would like to walk you through a bit of the strategic plan. I won't read it line for line. You've got it in your council package as well. but I wanted to highlight a few different elements to show you where we came up with the information we did and how we came to this strategic plan. So we have the highlights. We're going to go through a quick introduction, why we came to this, the community consultation, our mission and vision statements, which I should add were come to in coordination with our steering committee, who a group of volunteers from several different stakeholder groups who were also extremely helpful to us. The goals and objectives we came up with, and then wrapping up with the conclusion. So as you all likely know, the mayor of Lasalle, the first mayor of Lasalle was Vital Benoit, and the town purchased his home as part of the Heritage Zone in the Small Coast Waterfront Project. And my role was to help determine the next steps for the site. And the purpose of this first phase was to gain feedback from the community and the public, various stakeholders about the potential future uses for this site, while respecting the rich history of the buildings, the property, and of course, the wider LaSalle community wherever we could. And just to give you a quick highlight, I didn't include all of this in this plan, but I'm happy to expand on this and any questions, but we did a very comprehensive community consultation. And while we were in the pandemic for the entire time, so there wasn't really any opportunity for in-person consultation like we would have had in the previous era and the before times. This actually did open up a lot of opportunities online, which maybe we wouldn't have taken advantage of before this era. So we did have one in-person opportunity at one of the night markets, the LaSalle night markets, where I did meet a couple of the counselors there in person, which was wonderful. But otherwise, everything else we did was essentially online. And that was reviewing studies, meeting with the project team, different stakeholder groups across Essex County and LaSalle, indigenous groups, a variety of local community organizations such as tourism, horticulture, heritage, regular meetings with our Provincial Ministry of Culture and our Provincial Ministry of Tourism, regional advisors. We had regular meetings with the steering committee, which included Dr. Peter Nielsen, who was a real active heritage advocate, Madeline Della Valle, who was a heritage advocate, Lionel Kernerman from TWEPI, Didier Merat from the Francophone organization, and Karen Malash. So really helpful to have their feedback on all of this. And I thank them very much for donating and sharing their time. So where did all this community consultation lead us to? The common themes that came out during this consultation, which included all of you, was that the time really had come for the town to have its own heritage attraction, to celebrate and share local history, and to create pride in the community, which is really important. And there's more than enough really interesting and dynamic history about the town of LaSalle, from pre-colonial times to modern day. So there will be no shortage of opportunity to share that when the time comes. Another common theme was that indoor and outdoor use was very important to people, which even more important during COVID when outdoor activities were critical. Including all of those elements of LaSalle history, from Indigenous pre-settler to Francophone and British to Vital Benoit's era and Prohibition, as well as modern day, should be part of the exhibitions, collections, acquisitions, and programming, as well as, and this is a fairly common mandate for any heritage site or museum, is the acquisition, exhibition, preservation, and conservation of important historic objects and cultural artifacts. Education was a key common theme, and lifelong learning as a core function, as well as the use of technology that is easy to use and understand, as we can all appreciate now how important that is. And as well as just for accessibility, as well as interactive options to engage with visitors both inside the museum as well as online. And that's what we'll be working even closer with in the coming months. So those are the common themes that came out during the several months of our consultations. The mission statement was developed by our team, meaning that the Benoit House would be a year-round, vibrant gathering place where our community can meet, learn, and connect. We will engage the public and preserve the heritage of LaSalle and the surrounding area through unique, diverse, and equitable activities. And our vision would be that the Benoit House will be an innovative historic site dedicated to inspiring our visitors by providing authentic experiences through diverse stories. Now, I will go through these. I won't read line by line, but I wanted to share with you the goals and objectives that we developed based on the feedback from these public consultations. And we wanted to make sure that these opportunities were assessed within the framework of the town of LaSalle strategic goals. Obviously, we want to make sure those all line up. So the first goal that we had developed was we wanted to make sure that we developed the Benoit House as a center of heritage excellence and source of community pride through promotion of local history, investing in all aspects of museum operations, an exhibition plan, a permanent collection, and collections management policy. All of those are critical as well to meet provincial funding standards, which are essential to operations of any heritage site in Ontario. Our second goal was ensuring that all visitors have a positive and engaging experience and want to return, which would include providing customer service training to our staff and volunteers, making sure the programming is different. You know, you want to be able to come to heritage sites like this more than once. So we want to make sure our activities and our programming changes, so there's reasons for people to come back. Encouraging partnership opportunities, as well as input from our users, special events, and this was a great element. So many special events, activities and ideas were suggested, both from my discussions with you on council, as well as from the public. So a lot of great ideas on how we could really utilize the space, both the grounds and the building itself, and of course, ensuring that our site is inclusive and open to diverse groups of people. Our third goal is to provide innovative and authentic educational programming and lifelong learning opportunities. And we're lucky in Windsor, Essex, as well as Chatham-Kent in the region. We have several local and regional educational institutions and organizations, so there's a lot of opportunity there, making sure that our programming reflects Ministry of Education curriculum so we can work with schools, elementary and secondary, building partnerships with different community groups and levels of government to ensure we're having really interesting and dynamic activities, inspiring and enriching special events and rental opportunities, of course, and back to the year-round indoor and outdoor events as well. Our fourth and second last goal was to make sure that we ensure diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion are maximized in all aspects of museum operations and programming. And this would ensure, to include this would to be develop a diversity and equity plan for the museum, making sure that training is shared with museum staff and volunteers as the building and the buildings, I should say, are renovated in the future, making sure that those elements are incorporated into any building design plans and renovations, and also making sure we're having a regular dialogue with the town of LaSalle Accessibility Committee. And last but not least, our fifth goal is technology, getting back to technology again. And as we learned with the pandemic, and every tourism, arts, and culture site that I'm familiar with had to pivot quite quickly to becoming a technology expert on how to share their collections, their activities with a wider audience digitally, as opposed to in person when they couldn't be open. So we're already into that now, and incorporating technology and innovation would be included in all aspects of the Benoit House as well. So this would also include incorporating energy conservation measures and innovative technologies wherever possible, for fun and interactive opportunities to engage with visitors both inside the museum and online. So whether you're in Europe or in Asia or in LaSalle, you can actually engage with the museum no matter where you're located in the world. Make sure our collection plan is digitized, and so it's accessible to researchers and people all around the world, as well as making sure very straightforward but important elements to link the Benoit House to all areas of the Small Coast Waterfront project, with things like signage, cross promotion, and other connections. and developing a specific digital communication strategy moving forward to ensure engagement with the community and that we're taking advantage of all the most up-to-date technology to make sure that we can really put our best foot forward. So those were our 5 goals and really helped a high-level encapsulation of the really vast and diverse feedback that we received from the public and the community. And I will wrap up today by just saying that the Benoit House, while it is being paused in this first stage, it is a very important project because this is really how we create heritage and culture as human beings and how we create meaning for ourselves and our community and really are an integral part of communities. They create stories and collect stories and objects and ideas. They help create conversations and help encourage learning and study and research. So as the 21st century marches on and evolves, museums do too, and they're gathering places and unique locations for events, and as well as online opportunities as well for forums for ideas. They're really a catalyst and driver for economic growth, which is really key as we come out of the pandemic and need to really get our economies back on track, both in Lasalle and beyond. So it's a remarkable opportunity to create these same catalysts for Lasalle and Essex County. And it's been a real pleasure learning more about this community and getting so much more familiar with all the great history and all the different stakeholders that have shown such an interest in this project. It's extremely rewarding to work on this. So I thank you very much for your time and we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have about the project.
Thank you, Ms. Story. I'm not sure if administration wants to add anything before we go to council.
I don't have anything to add. I see Mr. Militia's just come on. I'm not sure if that's because he has something to add, but I'm certainly available to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, members of council? Anything to discuss? Add question? Councillor Regis-Vignola?
Not a question. Actually, there is one question, but through you to Allison. What's the capacity at the Benoit House?
Well, we haven't had that determined yet. That would actually be determined once we have the renovation architectural plan submitted to us, and we haven't gotten to that phase yet. We would still, the next phase of this project plan would involve figuring out how many floors of the building would be open for public use, things like storage, HVAC, physical plant. So right now we don't have that information yet. That would be determined in the next phase once we have the architectural plans more detailed for the whole site. So I apologize, I don't have that specific number for you yet. That would be coming in the next phase of the plan once the renovations of the site would begin.
Thank you. I think you had a great presentation. I think it's great to highlight the heritage and culture in LaSalle. So great job.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Desjardins, did you have a question? No? Okay, no one else? All right. I have to agree with Councillor Regis-Vignola. I mean, I think the one thing we've all learned in the last couple of years is that there's an appetite for more cultural events, especially around Windsor, Essex County. And I think that's the one thing we really haven't had a chance to really explore in LaSalle. We've started to is the heritage and the culture of our community. So we do look forward to this project. And I do see in the report that once the strategic plan is approved, then we'll move on to that next part, which you said, like the building construction, the sites, and all that other information. So I look forward to that. And if I can just get a motion from council. Moved by Councillor Regis-Vignola and supported by Councillor Desjardins. All in favor? Great. Thank you, Ms. Story, for joining us again this evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we will move on to item number 2, which is the Healing Hearts for sponsorship. And Mr. Mars popped up. I'm not sure, is he leading maybe this part of this one? Yeah, perfect. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Mara.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash. Certainly tonight's report before you is regarding a sponsorship. The town has been approached by Mr. and Mrs. Brian and Mary Lynn Parent, along with Families First Funeral Home and Tribute Center to provide a reforestation sponsorship in LaSalle. Through discussion with the group and through the discussions with the town, we have identified a location at the Vollmer to provide a reforestation in the aspect of what the sponsors are looking for. As part of the proposal, there is a proposal for gazebo, a butterfly garden, trail connections, and some benches. And also the reforestation will cover an approximate area of about 3.25 acres. And that is all located over top of that large hill that is located to the east of the baseball quads and south of the stormwater management pond. The reforestation will take place in the fall of 2022. That is being coordinated through the Conservation Authority, Essex Region Conservation Authority, who's going to take the lead on planting these trees. It is going to entail about 425 trees of sizes of about 5 feet to 7 feet tall at the time of planting. The sponsors have proposed to pick up most of the directly related costs relative to the sponsorship opportunity. There are some off-site trails that are going to provide accessibility to this particular site that benefit the Vollmer as a whole. So there is about $40,000 that is required to be funded through town reserves. The proposal is to call this area the Healing Hearts Forest, as outlined within the letter that was submitted. So with that, that concludes my presentation. So there is a number of recommendations as part of the report. First is that council approve and support this sponsorship. And secondly, that council approve the execution of the agreement once an agreement is put together with the sponsors. As noted, there is some cost for the town, the $40,000 for some offsite trails. That is going to be funded through the Vollmer Reserve. So again, that concludes my presentation. I see Ms. Wells from Family First is online. I'm not sure if Ms. Wells has anything further to add or if there's any council questions, but from there, I'll pass it over to back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. Ms. Wells, did you have anything you want to add?
Hi, sorry, hi there. Thank you to all of you. Certainly, I mirror what has been said by other projects. The Benoit House, certainly a Miss Story. Just the need out of this pandemic for us to heal, and the opportunity to do that in Lasalle, in a community that is vibrant, that is accepting, that we have served for many, many years, that we live in. Most of our team lives in Lasalle. So we're just really excited for this project, and we see a really good fit with Lasalle, and knowing that so many of us, we all have that one thing in common, right? That we have grieved. We have grieved either a loss of someone we love, we have grieved a relationship, we have grieved the loss of a job. We have so much in common in grief, but also that we need to take a step forward. And the idea was that everyone can go there for healing, being outside, being a part of the community. In this pandemic, being outside has never been more important. So we're happy to be a part of this project. And I know that this was something that Brian and Mary Lynn really believe in, and that they are also excited about. So from Families First, and on behalf of Brian and Mary Lynn Parent, thank you for considering this. And we're looking forward to a very bright future.
Thank you very much. Members of council? Councillor Desjardins?
Thank you. Through you to Ms. Wells. I think this is a wonderful idea, and I really appreciate the parents and Families First coming forward with it. I did have one question. We're talking about 425 trees, which is great. There'll be good sized trees when they go in. If people wanted to sponsor a tree, do you know if that will be part of the project at all, if they wanted to add to that?
I don't know if Mr. Mara can speak to this. I know this was a question that we had also, because we anticipate once our families once the families that we serve once we can make those connections as we go forward, we also see that people will want to be there, that will want to be in that area, and we would encourage that. I know when I walk the trails in Lasalle, I see the benches, I see the trees, and I see the care that goes into those memorials. I think we would be happy to support that partnership in whatever way benefits the town and the families, because I can foresee that being something that would be both appropriate and that families would want to take part in.
I'm sure Mr. Murrow wants to add to that.
Yeah, just further to that point, Councillor Desjardins, that discussion has occurred with the sponsors, and it has indicated in their letter that they're not looking for individual trees to be sponsored. It becomes a bit cumbersome when we're trying to provide that, and the location of where the trees are, they're going to be on the slopes, and trying to get to those locations are going to be a bit difficult. There was some discussion, we still need to work out the details, that there might be an opportunity to provide a localized area by the gazebo, that if people wanted to provide sponsorships, there could be a similar to what we have at the cenotaph, where there's a plate, a monument, a plate, and that might be something that the town can partnership as creating a more formal location for memorials, as opposed to individual trees, individual benches, and things of that nature. Just the general location of where these trees, they're not going to be they're going to be pretty inaccessible, and a bit difficult to access and to really get to and really pay tribute at the tree. So there has been some discussions. We still need to work out the details with the sponsors, and that will kind of form part of the agreement. But there wasn't any sort of indication at this point where individual trees would receive sponsorship. So certainly, as this is being proposed and paid for by these sponsors, we'll work out those individual details with them through the agreement.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. I would make a motion to accept the proposal if we want to go ahead with that.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion by Councillor Desjardins, but I do have a question from Councillor Carrick.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Just more of a comment. I just like to thank Brian and Mary Lynn Parent and Families First. As we know, above the symbolism that this is going to stand for, it's awesome, and it's great to pass by and go by or even look at or think about, but the significance of the trees and planting of trees, and how important that is for the overall health of the environment itself and people. So I think that's a double symbolic thing. I think that's great that they made this excellent contribution, and look forward to helping support the sponsorship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carrick. Councillor Renaud?
Yeah, I would also like to thank Families First. You know, we've had the Volmer for 12, 13 years now. And, you know, when it first started out, the focus was as a youth recreation facility as a hockey arena. And then it grew into more, and it grew into different sports. And then it grew into an event center for people to come out and to gather. Now we've just, this proposal just adds a whole nother dimension to our property, and brings value to the community, and brings more pride in the project. So I want to thank the team at Families First, and I look forward to seeing it through.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Renaud. Anything else? All right, so we have a mover, which is Councillor Desjardins. Did Councillor Renaud second? All in favor? Moved. Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us, Ms. Wells.
Thank you. You guys have a good night. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item G1, which is correspondence from the Township of Mulmore dated December 13th regarding truth and reconciliation actions. Members of council? Discussion, motion? Councillor Desjardins?
I'll move to receive.
Second.
So moved by Councillor Desjardins, supported by Councillor Akpada. All in favor? Councillor Carrick, you have a question real quick?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So are we does this also include the Howard Buford district study?
No, this is just item
Okay.
G1.
Okay, I thought we were doing them all, so that's good then. Okay, thanks. No, we're good.
Okay. All right. So all in favor of receiving item G1? Okay, fantastic. That moves. We'll move on to item 2 under the information items to be received, which is the correspondence from Tay Valley Township dated December 15th regarding province-wide assessment update. Members of council, any questions or comments on that? There being none, I do have a question for maybe Mr. Militia on this one. I understand what they're asking for regarding like assessments and not having them for several years, and how they're trying to push, I guess, MPAC to have this done sooner than later. But is there really a benefit to that? Because I guess the way I look at it is municipalities should be balancing based on our current numbers, not on what we hope to get in the future. And I feel like that's kind of, when I read it, that's the way I read it. Is that incorrect?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think what they're trying to get to is they're attempting to minimize the overall impact if and when the reassessment occurs at some point in the future. I think they're slating 2022, 2023 is at that point. So as you can imagine, there's been across Ontario, and Lasalle is no different, across Ontario from the last reassessment date, which was in 2016 till even today, but then extending it further a couple more years. There's been a huge growth in the assessment values across Ontario. We're hearing an average of 30 or 40%, and I know that our average is probably closer to 50 or 60% here locally in Lasalle. So I think what they're trying to get to is, by delaying it even more, they're anticipating that there may be a more significant impact happening in 2 years as opposed to now. So I don't know, again, from the perspective of a council position on this, I would recommend that we receive this information at this point in time. But recognizing that the shift in the assessment that we're expecting is going to be a very significant impact to ratepayers both in Lasalle and across Ontario. And I would suspect that part of the delay that the province is going through is trying to find the mechanisms to help mitigate some of those shifts that we're seeing that we suspect are going to occur.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I guess it is really concerning when you think of especially somewhere like Lasalle, who has seen the increases that we've seen, well, even Windsor, Essex County in general. So that's, I guess my question was, when you answered it, was should we be receiving this or should we be doing more with it, just because obviously we have to be concerned about our residents and what they can afford and how we can help them through the next few years as those increases come, which we're expecting to be quite large.
Yeah, I suspect that the province is hearing from us and hearing from informally through a number of our associations, through the municipal administrators, the tax collectors, the municipal finance officers, that this is going to be a significant impact in shifting assessment responsibility, or better I say, tax responsibility. What in our municipality, we suspect it's going to go from probably the more recently built homes into the less recently built homes. That's where the shift's going to happen. And so they're hearing from a number of associations and municipalities in general, maybe a bit more to the opposite of what the municipality of Tay is looking for. In that they're looking for the province to come up with some mitigation strategies to help with that shift. So I think that seems to be where we are landing at this point, is that we'd like to hear and give the opportunity for the province to see if there are any mitigation strategies that they can come up with.
Okay, thank you very much. Council? No motion?
I'm making motion to receive.
Thank you, Councillor Reno, supported by Councillor Desjardins. All in favor? All right. That is moved. So we will move on now to the correspondence from the town of Kingsville dated December 17th regarding the letter of instruction from the Windsor Essex County Health Unit. Obviously, I guess at this point in time, it no longer applies as it's a province-wide and no longer Windsor Essex Health Unit. So do we still, was that something we would still receive?
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I would suggest that we take the same action that we took with a similar letter from the town of Essex, where we received that document as well.
Okay, members of council. All right, moved by Councillor Riccio Spignolo, supported by Councillor Capata. All in favor? All right, motion received on that one. And then now we're going to move on to item 4, which has the Howard Bouffard Master Drainage Study update. And I will turn that over to Mr. Mara.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash. Tonight's report is a report that's been prepared in response to a council question regarding an update for the Howard Bouffard Master Drainage Study. As council is aware, and as part of the report before you tonight, there was a notice provided to the local area residents in April of 2021, which put the study on hold. In somewhere in mid-2020, about mid-2020, the town became aware of some extraneous circumstances or some additional information relative to our boundary conditions, relative to flows and water that are flowing through some of our major drainage systems that contributes to the area of the Howard Bouffard. And that is what has led to a larger overall Turkey Creek watershed study that is being led and being conducted through the Conservation Authority. It is being led and conducted through the Conservation Authority because the area is quite significant. It does cross jurisdictional boundaries. 80% of this watershed lies in the city of Windsor, while about 15 of this lies in the town of Lasalle, and about another 5% of this watershed lies in the town of Tecumseh. So certainly we are working with the Conservation Authority and our 2 neighboring municipalities to sort through some of these larger issues that are relative to the entire watershed. So certainly that has caused a bit of delay on our unique specific location within the Howard Bouffard area. The purpose for pausing our study, the Howard Bouffard Master Drainage Study, was to understand what our boundary conditions are. We are affected by overflow from the neighboring drains, which is generated within our neighboring municipalities, that drains through this area. And so certainly what we wanted to understand and make sure that we have a good handle on from both ourselves, the Conservation Authority, and our 2 municipal neighbors is what that effects would be. So that is really the premise of the larger Turkey Creek watershed study. Again, as I noted, we're a bit in the passenger seat on that particular study. It's being led by the Conservation Authority. At the time of writing the report, there was still dialogue occurring between the 3 municipal partners and the Conservation Authority. I can report that as of last week, the proposals have been accepted by the Conservation Authority, and instructions have been given to the consultants to proceed with the work in the phase 2 portion. Again, that larger study is being done in 2 phases, with phase 1 having been complete. It was a lot of review of background information, the various studies that have occurred over the last 2 to 3 decades within this watershed, and making sure that there was a clear understanding of what had to happen. Really, the nuts and bolts of the study and the real detailed modeling is going to occur in this phase 2 portion. And as I had mentioned at the time of writing the report, there was no indication of when that project was going to start. But as of last week, that has commenced, or at least approval has been given to the consultants. And certainly the town of LaSalle will be working closely with the Conservation Authority and the 2 consultants and our 2 neighboring municipalities to see this project forward. Once this larger study is done, then there is going to be a need to restart the master drainage study in the Howard Bouffard area. Certainly, once the information is available, which we suspect could occur within the next month or 2, we will be in a position to review how and what we have to do in order to restart the master drainage study. As you are aware, the master drainage study is a public process. So we are going to have to put together most likely another public meeting to explain what has occurred to date and explain if there has been any changes relative to what has transpired with this other larger study, and basically if there's any changes to our boundary conditions, what they are and what effects they have within the identified solution to the Howard Bouffard study area. Certainly, that is really the next steps on the Howard Bouffard drainage study. A lot of the development plans in that area are kind of on hold right now until we understand what is occurring and what the ultimate solution will be. Certainly, once the master drainage study is completed, there are a number of other steps to occur, which is probably going to take anywhere from 24 to 48 months, again, 2 to 4 years to work through. There's a lot of work and a big ticket dollar value to this project. So a lot of things have to happen after the drainage study, the master drainage study is completed. Certainly detailed design, property acquisition, and probably most importantly, basically a financial plan needs to be worked out on how best to pay for this work and the various components of it. So certainly those are really the next steps once we have an understanding of what occurs within this study area. And then at that point, obviously, once all that occurs and detailed design and property acquisition is in place, then certainly construction of that can occur along with the subsequent development of the lands around it. So certainly this has been provided in response to the council question, as I had noted, and it's certainly a report available for council to receive for information. With that, Deputy Mayor Meloche, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mara. We do have 2 residents who would like to speak on the issue. If we maybe could do that and then go to council questions right after that. So we have Mr. Mayu. Hi, Mr. Mayu.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, you can hear me. Thank you. Okay. Yes, I prepared just a statement here I'd like to read, and I'd be happy to take any questions after that. Mayor Bondi, Deputy Mayor Meloche, and Town Council. My name is Sean Mayu, and I live at 2865 Bouffard, along with my wife, Katie, and our 3 children, Ava, Ryan, and Charlotte. They're ages 10, 8, and 5, establishing their roots right now every day, living at 2865 Bouffard. This evening, I'm here to speak to item G4 on the agenda, which is the Howard Bouffard Master Drainage Study Update. I have lived in Lasalle for over 35 years, of which the last 9 have been on Bouffard Road. Prior to owning 2865 Bouffard, my parents, Bev and Ken Mayu, owned the property for 18 years. Our home is not just a house, it's a 27-year family home occupied by 2 generations of taxpayers. As you are all aware, the town of Lasalle has plans to take our home away from us, beyond our will, to be demolished for the purposes of widening a storm drain so that more homes can be built in the town of Lasalle. This is known as expropriation. Our property is needed by Lasalle to grow the community and increase tax revenue. Essentially, our family is being uprooted and our home destroyed so that more houses can be built. As if that's not disappointing enough for us, we've had to endure 2.5 years of living in uncertainty as to when that is going to happen. On July 20th, 2019, we were told our house was needed. It's now January 10th, 2022, and nothing has changed. Our home and property is still needed, and the time frame is still undefined. Our property remains marked with a large red X in an environmental assessment, which is publicly available online. One of the 4 properties required was purchased when it became available on the market, and it was recently demolished on October 22nd. A town does not purchase a $500,000 home and demolish it if there's uncertainty that a secondary study will affect the proposed drain requirements. During the last 2.5 years, we have in good faith attempted to negotiate with the town. We presented fair offers in accordance with expropriation law. Both offers were turned down, and both offers were met with non-negotiable counter offers far below actual fair market value of our home. The counter offers did not provide for any costs incurred in the process of relocation, which is guaranteed under the law. To be clear, the town left us with the option of accepting a below market offer or wait indefinitely for expropriation process to proceed. This has left us in this constant state of limbo. To say that our home is and will continue to be subject to deferred maintenance is perhaps an understatement. We are living in a family home that does not feel like a family home anymore. Our pride of ownership has been taken away from us. Ours is not a home that we will have long-term, contrary to our expectation when we moved in over 9 years ago. We are handcuffed by the town's timeline, which is again undefined and unclear. Using expropriation law to take away a family's home should not be something that is taken lightly and should be met with extreme due diligence, planning, and care. The process should ensure that the family stands to have their home taken is made whole. We shouldn't have to fight with the town to treat us fairly when it is the town that wants to take our home beyond our will. No resident of Lasalle should have to live in a state of constant uncertainty. That is not vibrant, it's not healthy, and it's not caring, which is it's not a caring approach to municipal affairs, which is the town's motto. After consultation with IRCA myself, town management, town consultants, legal counsel, it's abundantly certain that Lasalle still requires our property. After 2.5 years, Bouffard homeowners deserves a specific timeline as to when letters of expropriation will be issued. Every day, month, year that goes by is another day, month, year that our family, especially our children, our young children, are establishing roots in a home that will inevitably be taken and demolished. We have endured anxiety as a family beyond what you can imagine. What may be business for you is extremely personal for us. I acknowledge tonight's report and I acknowledge the timelines in the report are 8 to 12 months to finalize the master drain study and another 12 to 24 months to determine detailed design and financing. This is not a timeline for us. We were given the same timeline over 2 years ago. Is it reasonable to live under the threat of expropriation for this long and potentially 3 years longer? Is that reasonable? This time frame puts us and other families at extreme hardship. Our family and our affected neighbors want to move on and invest our time and effort in new beginnings. These are precious days, months, years that we would rather be growing those roots elsewhere. We have lived under the threat of our home being taken for far too long. What we are asking for is reasonable and simple. If you don't need our home, please let us know and I will have my legal counsel draft a binding agreement to relieve us of the threat of expropriation so that we can continue to live free of this anxiety. 2, if you do need our home, give us a specific timeline as to when we can expect letters of expropriation. No more delays, no more unnecessary taxpayer costs. After 2.5 years, Bouffard homeowners subject to expropriation deserve a specific date and action. And I welcome any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayu. Mr. Militia, should we answer questions now or move on to the second delegate first?
I would move on to the second delegate at this time.
Thank you. So we have David Lynn, also a resident. Hi, David.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor Malash and members of council. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. I reside at 2945 Bouffard Road with my wife, Dawn. We lived here for 35 years, happily raising our children. We live just 4 doors down from my daughter and son-in-law, Sean and Katie Mayu, whose home has been identified as necessary for the proposed drainage project. Throughout our years on Bouffard, we have always enjoyed excellent service from council and the administration. Issues and concerns that affected us or our neighborhood were addressed promptly and openly, and then solved to everyone's mutual satisfaction. As a council, the myriad of concerns you are asked to deal with on a regular, if not daily basis presents a daunting challenge. Thank you for the time and energy you give in the service of our town, not just in meetings like these, but also in the preparation and follow-up that is required. Yours is not an easy task. With regard to the Howard Bouffard Master Drainage Study update, I'd like to focus my comments not on the specifics and details, but instead on a macro view of the proposed project. I recognize that large projects are economic drivers and are likely to be approved and progress even if opposed by a small group of residents. However, I would ask you to extend your consideration beyond the estimated capital costs and benefits to the town. One consideration in a project such as this is that of the land requirements and the impact on existing properties. I would ask you to contemplate if the primary consideration should only be an option that maximizes revenue from more developable lands to the detriment of the existing residents. I suggest that the preferred option be one that minimizes the impact on current residents, or at least recognizes this significant impact and includes measures to mitigate it and to compensate the affected residents appropriately. The information presented at the public information centers about the drainage project always summarizes the relative advantages and disadvantages of the various options. Such factors as construction costs and the gain or loss in tax revenue resulting from more or less developable land are highlighted. But I would argue that there are other important aspects to consider. I ask you to also factor in the human cost brought on by the disruption to the affected residents. They are currently living under the shadow of this impending project and have been for the last 2.5 years. They will continue to be impacted until the details of this project are determined and all outstanding issues are resolved. Specifically, there is an ongoing cost to them in terms of anxiety and distress they experience brought on by the uncertainty about the potential need to expropriate their property, as well as the obvious impending financial implications. The Provincial Policy Statement 2020 under the Planning Act declares that, quote, strong communities, a clean and healthy environment, and a strong economy are inextricably linked. Long-term prosperity, human and environmental health, and social well-being should take precedence over short-term considerations, end quote. This is reflected in our town's motto, healthy, vibrant, caring. Indeed, this is what Lasalle has been known for as long as we've lived here. May I suggest that Council has an opportunity to demonstrate these values in a practical way and not let them only be hollow words on a sign or letterhead. This report from administration says, quote, the current Howard Bouffard Master Drainage Study is currently on hold, end quote. While this may be true from the town's point of view, please consider that the anxiety brought on by the uncertainty of these issues goes on daily for those who are potentially affected. Their anxiety and distress were never formally put on hold. What better way to show care for all the residents of Lasalle than to demonstrate care for individual families who have been negatively affected by the looming prospect of this project for the last 2.5 years and will continue to be until the issue is resolved. It may take some innovative thinking. It may take some political will and a financial commitment to find a mutually satisfactory solution for this property acquisition, rather than simply continuing to defer decisions that must eventually be made. Indeed, administration has already demonstrated that this is possible by acting proactively to purchase one of the 4 identified properties and demolishing the structure. Please know that a decision to defer action is in effect a decision to continue to inflict the affected property owners, including my extended family, with what at times has proven to be severe emotional distress and significant anxiety. I do recognize the importance of waiting for the larger watershed study in order to seek a more refined and efficient solution. However, I would ask that Council direct administration to take the necessary steps to expedite this process and to re-engage immediately in good faith with the affected homeowners to find a mutually acceptable solution to the problems arising from this impending project. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to present these thoughts for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Lynn. If I could maybe have administration address the 2 residents' comments.
Certainly, through you, Deputy Mayor Malash. Certainly, the 2 comments are really solely related to property matters. Certainly, the forum for discussion of property matters is different relative to the legislation through the Municipal Act, but certainly the town continues to work through finding the solution as identified as part of the larger watershed in Howard Bouffard study. Certainly, we do want to ensure that if we are moving forward with property purchases, that we are doing it in a reasonable manner with the best available information to us. Certainly, when discussions occurred with the property owner at their request, that has occurred, and we were using the best available information at the time. Certainly, as I had noted, mid-2020 is when the town became aware of some of our extraneous circumstances relative to some of our boundary conditions. And certainly we want to make sure that whatever solution we're identifying as part of the Howard Bouffard Master Drainage Study is being the most effective solution for the situation. Certainly the Master Drainage Study is following the Environmental Assessment Act. It is following the legislation. There are a number of factors that do need to occur and get evaluated. Certainly property effects, socioeconomic aspects, the costs, the environment, all of those factors get carried through. And certainly when the report is finalized, when the report eventually gets finalized, all of that detail is contained within the report, but we just haven't got to that step yet because again, we had to put the project on hold. And certainly this, like I had mentioned, that this is an Environmental Assessment Act process. All environmental assessments require this to occur. Any sort of road improvements, any sort of improvements such as this relative to drainage, they all identify what has to happen and what property is to occur. Certainly, again, when we look at these types of projects in the magnitude of $50 to $60 million, they cannot happen overnight. They cannot happen in a short time frame. Certainly, we do work through trying to get those processes and those items in place. Certainly, council is involved in all the aspects of this, especially the property discussions and property acquisition through the appropriate legislation. So certainly, typically in a typical scenario, property discussions really don't occur with property owners until after a study is completed. But certainly in this particular case, those discussions started to occur at the request of the resident. And certainly that is where we ended up with what the delegates have referred to. So certainly those have occurred through the town solicitor and the resident solicitor, but certainly there just hasn't been any sort of formal acceptance of where that process was. And certainly given this little bit of lingering information that is out there, we want to ensure that the solution that is being identified is the correct solution, is the most appropriate solution, is the most efficient solution for the problem at hand relative to what is occurring with respect to the drainage out there. There is that outlying situation that the larger Turkey Creek watershed study may change some of that information, but until I get that information, until the town is comfortable and until we understand, and including the Conservation Authority needs to understand what the boundary conditions are, then we will work forward and through the updating of our master drainage study. So certainly, I hope that has tried to address some of the comments relative to what is occurring, but certainly, like I had mentioned, is we're not in the driver's seat of this larger Turkey Creek watershed study that was supposed to be completed sooner. The town continues to push and inquire with the Conservation Authority and our two neighboring municipalities to get that done. Certainly, once it's handed over, once the information is handed over to the town, and then we are in the driver's seat of the Howard Buford update or finalizing the Howard Buford master drainage study, we will be pushing this forward as quickly as we can to put some conclusion in front of council for final approval. Again, council has to approve the final master drainage plan, and then we move forward with how we are going to work through the details of putting the solution in place.
Thank you, Mr. Mara. Member Councilor Reynolds.
Thank you. My question's for Peter. Peter, I understand we're waiting for the data. We're waiting for the detailed design that comes from the data. At this point, is there any chance that their property would not be included in the solution? Is there any outside chance that we would not need that property?
At this point in time, Councilor Reynolds, again, there was enough information available that really put this project on hold. So we wanted to ensure that we were relatively comfortable with the numbers that we're putting forward through the external influence. Do I have the final answer for you that whether their property is required or not? I can't give you that formality and that finality of a answer at this point in time. There is an outside chance that, again, maybe the existing drainage systems that are out there are really efficient and handle the flows better than what is currently modeled. And that's really what we need to understand. So again, it's a tough answer to give, and that's really why we've put the project on hold. There's enough information or lack of information, I'll say, enough of lack of information out there that really gives us that comfortable feeling that says we should go spend a significant amount of money buying private properties and add that cost to the ultimate solution when there might be an opportunity to do something different. And so that's really why this project has that's really why we're waiting for some additional information to continue to move this forward.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. What I'm hearing from you is that the data could mean that down the road there's a different solution, and I can appreciate that you can't give a solution without The data, I'm not looking for the solution. All I wanted to know, which you answered, was that there is an outside chance that their property may not be necessary in the final decision. Thank you.
Mr. Militia, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, just briefly, again, I think Mr. Mara touched on it as part of his response to the presentation. Again, normally these processes, the environmental assessment process concludes and then property acquisition begins. And that's why, again, we're a bit different. This process has been a bit different in the sense of trying to get acquisition prior to the completion of the environmental assessment. So typically that is how we have followed the process. As part of the process, we were approached by the resident for acquisition. We were not able to come to a negotiated settlement at that point. And so we continue on with the original process that says we flow through the environmental assessments process. Once we complete that, then we move on to property acquisition. It's meant to flow in that fashion. This unfortunately took a bit of a different turn in the middle. Understanding though, again, and appreciating the comments that both the delegates and residents have made, that this has put them in a very awkward and anxious position. We fully appreciate and understand that. Unfortunately, the legislation is the legislation, and we need to follow through as we go.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. Councillor Carrick, did you go ahead and add something?
Yep. Yes, thanks. So again, yes, thanks for the presenters and their concerns, obviously. Just like happy to hear that finally the ERC is moving forward and all the partners are on board with this. If I understood you correctly, Peter, last week it's all taken care of. So Councillor Desjardins and myself did a good job moving along, staying nipping at their heels. Anyways, okay, so I've been getting questions about timelines because there's a lot of outside of this, the big dig, the drainage, timelines for developers and when they can start going. So I'm telling them it could be probably no earlier than 4 years. Maybe I'm wrong, but do we have a sense? I know it all depends on the things that don't put the cart before the horse, and I don't have a crystal ball, but at the same time, there's a lot of people itching to get going. And also that I'm glad to hear that everything's still on the table until we get through this first phase and we do the ERC and the hydraulic report, and understanding that behind Deuce Butte and on that kind of solutions east, that seems to be maybe options down the road that I don't want to give no false hope, but at the end of the day, all options are on the table. So I guess my concern and the big question is timelines. People are itching. Can you help me with that?
Certainly. Thank you, Councillor Carrick. We have heard those concerns loud and clear from the number of developers. We are dealing with this probably on a weekly basis through various discussions. So certainly, if I had to give you a timeline today, it's anywhere from 3 to 5 years from today. Certainly, that does not mean that they can start their development at the end of that. There is some components that can be done concurrently. So there's a number of planning processes. There's a number of approvals that can occur through that timing and be done concurrently. But certainly, the big number, or the big difficult part of this Howard Bouffard Master Drainage Study is going to be the financing and building of the solution. Finding the solution is probably the easiest part of it. I think when we start to talk about the magnitude of cost, who's paying for what are the responsibilities of the existing ratepayers, what are the responsibilities of the future development, what benefits them, how do we recoup those numbers? All of those are public processes. All of those require public meetings. All of those require need to follow various legislation. So certainly, there's a number of aspects that are going to be done, and certainly we are intending to do as much as we can concurrently to shorten the timeline as much as we can. And once we are in a position to start accepting planning applications for the area and have a real good understanding of what the costs are and how it's all getting paid for, certainly it all folds into council's approvals through these various studies that are going to be required. So certainly, I know it's not a straightforward answer, but we are trying to work forward through this in the most efficient way possible to get the development in that area going. Because again, you're not the only one that hears it. We hear it on a weekly basis. And we are working to find the solution, certainly with respect to dealing with what's currently existing out there and what's proposed to be planned and built out there as well.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Carrick. Any other members, council? No. Just a comment myself. I understand the concerns of Mr. Lynn and Mr. Mayhew. I mean, I couldn't imagine kind of seeing a report one day that says, hey, your house is the big X and they want to get ahead of the thing. I guess the question is, and I know you can't really give us an actual answer, but what kind of timeline? I know we're waiting for the environmental assessment completion, IRCA's finally on board, all that stuff. When would we be looking at dealing with properties, that portion of this? I know the project, we're talking 3 to 5 years, but that portion of it, just to kind of, I know it's not going to be an answer that they're going to like. I know we're not going to be able to give them a yes or no in 2 weeks from now, but at least if we can communicate with them, I guess, what to expect.
Certainly, as indicated in the report tonight before you, really after, as we approach the finalization of the Howard Buford Master Drainage Study, we'll get an understanding of what that solution is. So again, that's anywhere from 8 to 12 months worth of time. So my hope is that by the end of 2022, there should be some answers moving forward. Again, this is all theoretical, and that everything falls into place along the way, that everybody else has done their parts that we're waiting for to happen. Certainly, when we finalize the Howard Buford Master Drainage Study, or get very close to it, when council, if and when council finally approves it, it goes through the mandatory statutory requirements. Certainly, we will have to work through that. Certainly, we also have to gauge this in the 2022 election year, that we have to bring this forward at a time when council is able to make those types of decisions. So we have to bring that forward later on in the year. So we're going to have to determine the best way to bring some of that stuff forward. So that is really where we're at. And it really comes down to when the Howard Buford Master Drainage Study report is finalized, put up for public review, and gets formal final acceptance, is when the property discussion can probably resume and really refine what is required relative to the solution.
Thank you. So I'm assuming we just keep in communication with the residents throughout this process so that they're well aware, and hopefully in less than a year from now, we'll be able to give them some sort of an answer if their properties are going to be required. And I understand where administration is coming from. We purchased that first property knowing at that time the information we knew, and things have definitely changed since then. And we definitely don't want to purchase 3 more properties if there's another solution out there. And we've got to kind of think of the project as a whole, as well as the residents affected. So if we can just be sure that we're in constant communication, and like I said, hopefully we can give Mr. Mayhew and Mr. Lynn some answers within the year. Any other comments from council? Oh, Councillor Mara, or Councillor Mara, Mr. Mara.
Thank you. Just for council's information, the house that was purchased on Buford was actually purchased to accommodate the collector road through the area. It wasn't actually purchased for the drainage study. It so happened to line up with the open area across the road on Buford to allow for the collector road, that the future collector road that's supposed to identify to go north-south in that location. There is an opening on the south side of Buford immediately across from that to allow that road to go through and connect to Laurier. That is Lasalle Woods Boulevard, where it currently starts up in the Forest Trails development. It's supposed to turn and curve southerly down through there. So the premise and notion of what that house was purchased for was really to deal with the collector road. And we did have enough information relative to the transportation master plan. And the house was actively for sale. So there was a active seller and an active buyer, and that is how that transpired and what was required for that particular property.
Thank you, Mr. Mara. Actually, I didn't know that specifically what that property was purchased for, so I do appreciate that. Kind of helps me understand the situation a little bit more on that area. Again, members of council, anything? Do you have a motion? Councillor Giselle?
Thank you. I would just like to say to Mr. Mayu and Mr. Lynn, I'm sorry that there are so many definite maybes on this process. I can only imagine what kind of anxiety it's creating. And unfortunately, it's anxiety on our end as well. We don't like to keep projects like this on hold. It's not something that's done intentionally. And I do believe that our engineering staff and the IRCA people are doing the best they can to move this forward. These new boundaries are something that came out, I think they came out of the blue and have upset the apple cart. So I do apologize for the definite maybes. And at this point, I'm just going to make a recommendation that we bring the update forward to receive. I think that's all we can do at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Desjardins. So we have a motion to receive the reports submitted this evening by Councillor Desjardins. Can I get a support on that? Councillor Carrick? All in favor? All right, thank you. So that's moved. We will move on to item 6. Item 5, the development charge indexing. And Mr. Langlois, I believe that's you.
Deputy Mayor, members of council, the report before you, this is an annual report that's provided to council. Basically what it does, it adjusts our development charge each year for inflation. Basically what that does, we did spend quite a bit of time talking about inflation during the budget sessions last month and how it's one of our challenges. As you can see in the report here, the increase is based off a non-residential construction price index. So the increase year over the year is 11.6%. And basically what this will do as we move forward with some of the projects that are funded by development charges, this ensures that the price of growth stays with the developer and does not shift over to the tax base. And this was approved as part of the development charge study that was completed in 2020. But I'm just formally every year I bring it to council to be received. Be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Langlois. Any questions, comments from Councillor Rano?
Thank you, Mr. Langlois. Just a quick question. We're always looking to be in the middle of the pack when it comes to our tax base and things like that and our mill rate. Does this, where does this increase, of over 10%, where does it put us with the other municipalities around us?
I'm not sure the other municipalities increase, but I am pretty sure that Watson Associates has completed the development charges studies for almost all of the other municipalities. And this is a standard increase that they include in their development charge studies. So, and we received this rate directly from them with the supporting tables from Statistics Canada. So I'm probably pretty sure that the other municipalities would be experiencing the same increase.
Okay, so it'll be the same increase. So if it's fair to say that if we were a number 3 or a number 4 before, everybody's going to go up the same amount. We'll be in the same position as we were before. We would still be, if developers felt that we were competitive before, they would still feel that we're competitive with this rate.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reno. Any other questions? No. Do I have a motion? Moved by Councillor Reno, support by Councillor Riccio Spagnolo. All in favor? All right, and that is good. So we'll move on to our next item, which I'm assuming, Mr. Langlois, this is yours too, which is the fourth quarter property tax write-offs.
Correct. Write-offs for the fourth quarter are very, very minimal. An example of what they would probably include would be a demolition of a garage or a building on someone's property under residential, and commercial, probably the same thing, or reallocation to a different class. It's very minimal for the quarter. Be happy to answer any questions.
Members of council, any questions, comments? Motion? Okay, moved by Councillor Riccio Spagnolo, support by Councillor Reno. All in favor? All right, and that moves. So we will move on to number 7, which is the November 2021 financial statements and financial reports. I know who it is.
There really hasn't been a lot of change from from October to November. I would be happy to answer any questions. We are Chantel, our supervisor of accounting, is working diligently right now to get our year-end numbers all in check and all finalized. But we are in pretty good shape looking forward to the end of the year at this point in time. So if there's any detailed questions that council has, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, members of council. There being none, a motion. Councillor Acapata, support by Councillor Carrick, all in favor? And that moves as well. So moving on to item 8, which is our summer reports to council. And Councillor Carrick, move. Do I have a support? Councillor Acapata, all in favor? And that moves as well. So item H is our bylaws. Do we have all 3 readings at once, Mr. Militia or Mrs. Jean? Do we have to read each bylaw number?
All at once usually is how we've been doing it.
Okay, so the bylaw number is 8657 to 8660. If I can get all 3 readings. Councillor Desjardins, support by Councillor Acapata, all in favor? And those are moved as well. Any council questions? Councillor, no one? Nobody? No questions? Wow. Any statements by council members? Councillor Acapata.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, just to our administration, a number of folks came by and actually knocked on my door and were very impressed with the light display and how everything went. I've heard it from a number of people in our community and from some folks who visited Lasalle and actually found it quite wonderful to walk through there. So please, Mr. Militia, to the team, thank you very much for the work, and it's being noticed.
Thank you very much, Councillor Acapata. We're very proud of the work that we've been able to do under some pretty extreme circumstances. Things we never thought we'd have to deal with is extreme wind with a 35-foot tree was one of them in particular. But again, the team is really both the team from Public Works in terms of putting it all up. Just one important note, all the balls on all the ornaments on the Christmas trees were all put up by hand. Individually, just so hats off to the Public Works crew, both the seasonal staff as well as the park staff, as well as a few others that we had helping out going through that. So again, we're looking forward to, we've extended it obviously for an additional 2 weeks, and because they were slated to stop on the 9th, I believe. So we've extended those to the 23rd. We still see a fair amount of people walking through, which is quite nice to see even at this time of year. And we've received a lot of positive comments. And I know Ms. Fernaro and her team are looking at the 2022/23 season to see what kind of new things we can bring to the table. So very excited about the success thus far and what the future holds.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. I agree. It's been a nice addition to the town. We've looked for it for a few years, but I think this year is needed more than ever. So I think our staff did an amazing job with it, and it's just beautiful. And thank you for extending it there for a couple extra weeks, because we all know there's not much else families can do right now. So any other statements or anything? I do have a quick question, actually, maybe to Mr. Amara. I've had a couple of complaints about skaters, unfortunately, but they are going on the retention ponds, and I'm not sure if there's signage at our new retention ponds on Laurier.
Thank you. Certainly any of the retention ponds that are under the town's control, we do have signs at those locations. We have pushed extensive communication out through social media as well. The actual new pond there on Laurier between Huron Church Line and Disputed is not owned by the town just yet. It's still under construction. It's still the developer's responsibility. So my guess at this point is that there's probably no signs. We will take a look and see if there's an opportunity to place some signs and get some of that stuff put in advance of taking over the works there. But certainly it's just something that was just formally completed. And certainly we will ensure that the developer is protecting themselves from the liability and potential issues there that may arise. Certainly it's land owned by the town, but through the development agreement, we have not taken possession and or control of that particular stormwater managed pond as of yet.
Thank you. And I mean, I'm all for the kids finding somewhere to skate right now and something to do, but I don't think many people realize the danger of the retention ponds. Everyone thinks it's just the still piece of water that nothing happens, and they don't realize how quickly that can change. I myself didn't either until I started reading some of the communication the town sent out a couple of years ago, and I've seen our social media posts this year. And so hopefully families understand the dangers of retention ponds in the municipality. Any reports from committees? None. Notice of motion? No? Okay. Confirmatory bylaw. First reading, Councillor Reno, Councillor Avicii-Spagnolo. All in favor. Second reading, Councillor Akpada, Councillor Desjardins, all in favor. And third reading, Councillor Carrick and Councillor Reno, all in favor. Fantastic. Thank you. Our scheduled meetings are listed below. Thank you again for joining us for our first meeting of 2022. Have a good night, and thank you to all of our